Hello, so we're here to talk a little bit about the forfeits dispute that we're currently on strike about. We're all members of staff and members of City UCU, that's working at the City University of London. My name's Rachel and I'm here to talk to Corinna and Jennifer about their working lives and why they're on strike. So Corinna, do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about your job and what it means in terms of sort of casualisation, which is one of the 4 things that we're fighting about?
Sure. So I'm currently working at multiple University of London institutions. And I suppose for me, casualisation's really been the norm since I started working at City in the academic year of 2014-15. And I suppose it's been quite problematic, not just in working as a graduate teaching assistant or visiting lecturer, but also working working for professional services via Unitemps. And there are multiple different problems with the, I suppose, casualisation models across institutions and across departments that vary quite significantly, such as with Unitemps, not having any form of job security and knowing that I could just be let go at any moment, which I was, despite it was 2016 to 2021 that I worked for City's career service via Unitemps, and then received an email early 2021 saying that there was no longer funding to keep me on. But also models of casualisation regarding teaching and problems with contracts and having to apply to do the same thing that you did last year, the next year, and having no security that you're going to be employed year in, year out. And also knowing that you have to work because the money will just dry up in summer because you don't have that steady income flow.
So I guess you never know how much income you're going to get each term or, you know, in advance. When do you usually find that out?
I think it varies drastically. Currently I'm working and I haven't signed off my contract, as I think it's quite problematic.
So when you say problematic, you mean there's just mistakes in it that are not reflecting what you'd agreed to do?
Yes, and also I because there's multiple contract types, I've been placed on a contract that unfortunately for me means that I'm worse off than my counterpart who's on a different contract, to my understanding, due to modifiers and marking.
Right, so it's just like how everything gets counted is constantly having to be worked out. You're having to go and talk about it to people. And I'm guessing that means that there's just other things you're thinking about than how to teach and how to do the best job for your students because you're so distracted by all this stuff sometimes.
Certainly, and I know it's going to take hours and hours to try and rectify the issues with my contracts, and it's a balance. Do I reply to student emails or do I sort out my own contract? And it's a tricky juggling act, and this year unfortunately I haven't, even though we're already well into the term, haven't found the time to be able to dispute my contract with the people that I need to dispute it with.
Thanks, Corinna. That's really bad. No wonder you're angry. But Jennifer, I know that you've already completed your PhD, so you're kind of a stage ahead of where Corinna is in terms of your career. How have things been for you? Do you recognise what Corinna's doing, and where's your kind of working life at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started at City London in January, and my contract is for 6 months. I finished my PhD in October 2020, and I have been on casualised part-time, short contracts, short temporary contracts since I finished that, with absolutely no nothing that's ever going to say that I will get to that permanent position. This is my first full-time job, and it's exhausting and it's wonderful, and I'm so happy to be in my department. But there's still that extra stressor, as with Karina, on the other side of, in 6 months' time, I'm going back to being unemployed. And there's no safety net, there's nothing there. And unless I spend time where I should be teaching and marking and prepping and researching, I have to spend that time looking for jobs, which is not a short process, as we all know. So it's really, really difficult, especially when it's not just at City London where this happens across the entirety of the UK. So I was in a position where I worked during my PhD and I did some teaching. It was part-time hourly paid teaching up at Huddersfield, and that was difficult in that the way we were paid didn't quite make any sense. And I personally had to look into it. Like, 1 month I would get paid like £6 and the next month it was like £38. It was just the way that they'd worked it out. There was nothing wrong with it, but it just meant that, like, oh, okay, so I don't know how much money I'm getting month by month, and I can't afford to pay the rent 1 month, and then the next month that I have too much money. And it's so much of your own personal time that you have to spend being exhausted and trying to work all these things out, where actually I could be doing that looking after students or just spending time in my job and just making that the best it can be. As well, we, as all academics have to do, when you're on these temporary casualised contracts, you still have to do all of your research, and you have to do all your publications, you have to create book chapters, articles, books, you know, as we know. But when you're on a casualised contract, or when your contract ends, you're suddenly doing these things for free, but there's no way of getting an actual permanent full-time job without having these contributions to research. And it's lucky that we all love to do research, because otherwise there's no way that anybody would actually ever do that for free outside of universities. And we wonder why, you know, university spaces aren't diverse. Well, and it's because people who are working a full-time job outside of their temporary contract or a part-time job don't have time to do all these pieces of research that we are expected to do in order to get work. So it is across the UK that this is a problem. Yeah, and it's exhausting.
Thank you, Jennifer, and to Karina as well. I think it's really clear from just a little short, short introduction to your working lives, why it's really important that we join the UCU fight against casualisation, because it's also intimately connected to increasing workloads. It's connected to the sorts of inequalities that exist in the sector and that we want to change. And it's related to the universities as a whole, their ability to hold down our pay so that people aren't paid what they're worth and aren't able to teach and to do research in the way that we want to. So please support the strike, and thank you again to Jennifer and to Karina at City UCU.